Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to do the Finally Fall book tag. I try to do this every year, so I will link last year's version down below. And every year I try to find answers to these questions from the books that I have read in the last year. So we don't repeat all the answers all the time. So let's get into these questions and celebrate the fall time. Number 1. In fall, the air is crisp and clear. Name a book with a vivid setting. And I have a couple of books that came to my mind. The first one being What Moves the Dead and its sequel by T. Kingfisher. This first book is a Fall of the House of Usher retelling, and in this book we have mushrooms, we have a creepy manor, we have a dark lake, so I think all the atmosphere is definitely there. This is also a novella, so something you can just read on a dark, stormy night, and I would highly recommend you do so. Both of these were quite good. I think the atmosphere in the first one is even a little bit more spooky in of itself. Then I wanted to mention Yellow Jessamine. This one is also a novella, so something you can read on a stormy night. And in this one we have this setting of a town with merchants, and there is this sickness that they're afraid they're gonna import with their ships, basically. So you have this fearful town of powerful merchants, and we have one woman who is the only female merchant in this realm, and everything seems to be kind of connected to her, and I really loved the vibes of this. This is also sapphic, and I just really appreciated what this did. And last but not least, I have a YA recommendation, and that would be Our Last Echoes. This book is set on this Alaskan island. It is very isolated and cold, and you have the sea, and you have this I think it's two islands, or two different sides of the islands or something like that. And it's just rocky cliffs and strange birds, and this gets so creepy, and I loved it. I love these books by the author, and I just highly recommend. And this one, plot-wise, we follow a young girl looking for her mother who kind of got lost on this island many years ago. Question number 2. Nature is beautiful but also dying. Name a book that is beautifully written but also deals with a heavy topic like a loss or grief. Now, the first book is a little bit debatable. People like it or they hate it. I liked it, so I'm gonna mention it, and that is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. This is a book that is definitely about grief. We have the whole 5 stages of grief as parts of the book, basically, and you could argue about the beautifully written part. I wouldn't say it's the most beautiful prose you've ever read, but I just really love how Grady Hendrix manages to get emotions out of me. So this was a really good example for that as well. And if you get to the end, and what it actually deals with is in fact a very sad thing, so I really liked it. Then we have The Changeling by Victor Laval. This also deals with grief, but in a different way. We have a father who loses his child, and he thinks that the mother was the perpetrator. And this is a very interesting book. It definitely deals with a lot of the fears that you can have as a young parent, and then also it has this media, social media edge to it, which by now is maybe a little bit outdated in the specifics, but I think is still super relevant about sharing stuff about your child online. So definitely an interesting read, but one that deals with this grief in a very visceral way. And last but not least, I wanted to mention The Sea Elephants. This book also deals with grief, about a loss, but then also with the heartache that comes from not being able to live as your true self, as we follow a boy and then young man who figures out that he's gay in the 90s in India and how his family doesn't accept it, and he has to find his people basically, and it's a very difficult and heartbreaking way. Number 3, fall is back to school season. Share a non-fiction book that taught you something new. And I want to mention 2 books. First of all, I want to mention Fearing the Black Body, which is a phenomenal book about the connection of fat phobia and racism. This is a historical deep dive into the connections of bodies, or like specifically body weight and race and racism. And it's just fantastic. Like, if you're at least a little bit interested in these topics, you have to read this book. And then the other one would be a memoir called Sitting Pretty. And this is just a really, really good memoir about how life for a disabled person using a wheelchair is. And this mixes the personal experiences of the author with a lot of queer theory and queer studies. So I feel like you have this like underlying scientific basis to what is said, but then at the same time you have these real life experiences as examples for the things that are talked about. So very, very good, a great book. Number 4. In order to keep warm, it's good to spend some time with the people we love. Name a fictional family, household, friend group that you'd like to be part of. And this one was actually a little bit difficult, but I ended up going with The Winnowing Flame. We have a trio of main characters that we're following, and especially Vintage is a person that I would love to have around. Vintage is already a little bit older, and she is a female scientist, and she just wants to explore the world, but like find solution to problems for her world. And she's just such a great character who never gives up hope, who always keeps things moving along even if it looks so hopeless and so desperate. And so I had a great time with that book and that series. And for like Noon and Tor, I wouldn't mind hanging out with them, but like Vintage is the person I really want to be friends with. Number 5. The colorful leaves are piling up on the ground. Show us a pile of fall-colored spines. I tried to do that a little bit behind me. I just used a couple of books I've read recently that kind of give the fall vibe, so I hope you're pleased. Number 6. Fall is the perfect time for some storytelling by the fireside. Share a book wherein somebody is telling a story. And this series back here, starting with The Ruin of Kings, the Chorus of Dragons series, is the perfect example for books where people tell each other stories, and especially in the first book where we have 2 people who meet in a prison. One is a prisoner, the other one is keeping him prison basically, and they are telling the prisoner's life story up until that point where we see them, but they're starting at different points in time, and so kind of the timelines converge as they're both telling their side of the story. And yeah, this series is great. I just started reading the 4th book. There's a 5-book series. I'm not ready for it to end. I'm just really, really scared what it will do to me, but it's really good. And then I also just recently read The 10,000 Doors of January, and in this book we have the trope where our main character finds a book that is a written account of someone else's life, and so we read that story as well. So if you like that, then I would recommend that book. It didn't quite work perfectly for me, but I think it still was an interesting way to explore this world. Number 7. The nights are getting darker. Share a dark or creepy read. And I think creepy can be so personal. And I also didn't have like these really like standout horror reads recently, like in the last year. So I want to go with Out There Screaming, which is an anthology of horror stories by Black authors. And so I think you will find something creepy in there. Like whatever your taste is, there should be a story there for you. Number 8. The days are getting colder. Name a short, heartwarming read that could warm up somebody's cold and rainy day. The first one is my adult recommendation for this question, and that would be The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. This is also a short story collection, but a really, really good one. It focuses on Christian black women and the way they live their lives. Some of them are queer, some of them are not. And it's just a fantastic collection of stories. Definitely something that I didn't know I needed, but really enjoyed when I found it. Then my YA recommendation would be The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, which is a fantasy that is Asian inspired, I think it's Korean inspired, and we follow a young girl who sacrifices herself to the sea god in order to save her family. And I think these themes of family that we have here, this idea of protecting your people, and then also the kind of love story, the way it wraps up in here, it just had a cozy note, even though I wouldn't say this is a cozy book per se. And then for a middle grade recommendation, I would go with The Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, where we follow a young girl who can manipulate dough with her magic, and through a certain series of events, she's basically the last defense of her town against some big evil. Number 9. Fall returns every year. Name an old favorite that you'd like to return to soon. And I do have a couple of books I've been meaning to reread for a while, but the ones I wanted to mention, Nevermore, I really hope that the 4th book will come out next year, so I want to reread those first 3 to get prepared. Then we have Carry On, where I do own the final book now, and I just want to reread that to finally finish that series off. And then Everything I Never Told You, which I hope I will be rereading sometime before the year is over for a little project. So that is it for this tag. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had fun watching. Definitely let me know some of your answers down below, and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye!